Hello and welcome back. We are going to be talking about sharing our testimony with others. Revelation 12:11 says that the believers overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. Revelation 19:10 says that the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. Every time we share a testimony, the very root word of the word testimony actually means do it again. So when we share our story with other people, it ignites a hope in them that the same type of thing could happen in their life. In biblical times, the sower went out to sow the seed, and then the plow came afterwards and put the seed into the ground. When we share our testimony, our salvation testimony and other testimonies, it's like putting seeds out, and the plow of the Lord is attracted. So whether somebody directly received that testimony or not, the plow's coming, and he's going to be working that into their life. So we're going to learn how to share our testimony in 15 seconds, as well as 1 to 3 minutes, and ask the other person, do you have a story like that? This is so simple, so powerful, it's not threatening, and it invites somebody into a dialogue. Now, when I share my testimony, I'm going to talk about what my life was like before I met Jesus, how I met Jesus, and what my life is like after I met Jesus. And when in doubt, we're going to top load heavy on how I met him and afterwards. I'm not going to spend the majority of my time how I was a depraved sinner and then I met Jesus and everything's better. Okay, work with me here. We want to give people concrete, specific details that help our heart really connect with them. I'm not trying to sell them something. I'm wanting to share my life with you. But many of us know sometimes it can be hard for us to be succinct. Well, you got an hour? I'll share my testimony, brother. We're going to learn how to do it in 15 seconds as well as in 1 to 3 minutes. So you want to have a piece of paper for this one because we are going to be writing our testimony for part of it. Now, the 15-second prophecy I learned from a group called the Church Multiplication Coalition, who's been working with other organizations. And how this works is you say, there was a time in my life when. Now say that together with me. There was a time in my life when. There was a time in my life when. There was a time in my life when. We kind of just get that into our hearts. It's like, how can I pray for you? There was a time in my life when. Do you have any pain in your body? Anything that needs an issue? Can I tell you how awesome you are? We learn these different phrases that ignite us to follow the Lord in the moment. So there was a time in my life when I felt very lonely and rejected. 2 adjectives. Then I surrendered my life to Jesus. Now I am connected and loved. Do you have a story like that? Bam! That was my testimony right there! Okay, do you see how easy that is? It's super fun. There was a time in my life when, 2 adjectives, before you met Jesus, then I surrendered my life to Jesus. Now I am, 2 adjectives after Jesus. Do you have a story like that? I love this. Now that middle part, then I surrendered my life to Jesus. Say that verbatim, exactly. It's not, well, then I prayed and I got peace. We're not being vague or wishy-washy. Surrendered my life to Jesus is a very clear, short type of gospel presentation. It's trying to be clear with what happened, because it is what happened. It's not just I met God. That's too vague. There was a time in my life when, and you can adjust this depending on any context that you're with and what's going on with the person. You're having a conversation with somebody and they're going through a lot of financial issues. Well, you could share with them. You could adjust your testimony. There was a time in my life when I was really stressed out about provision. I know I'm going more than just one word, but I had a lot of stress over provision. I felt a lot of pressure. Now, then I surrendered my life to Jesus, and he set me free from that pressure, and now I'm able to trust him for provision. Okay, I cheated a little bit on that. I kind of gave phrases, but ideally it's just 2 words and 2 words. There was a time in my life when, 2 words, then I surrendered my life to Jesus. Now I am, 2 words. Do you have a story like that? Say it with me now. Do you have a story like that? All right, I want you to actually pause this for just a minute, and I want you to practice this. Now, here's the thing. You can just pick your 2 and 2 that you want to do, or you can practice doing a couple different ones to get yourself used to this format but being able to quickly share your testimony and invite somebody into a conversation. So pause this, practice a couple different 2 and 2 adjectives, come back and we'll do another testimony example. Welcome back. You guys did a really great job practicing your 15-second testimony. Here's one other way to share our testimony, and for this one it is helpful to write it down so that we can be specific and concise. So we're going to take just 2 sentences: before you met Jesus, how you met Jesus, and after you met Jesus. Just a couple sentences, and then we're going to practice reading it, we're going to practice sharing it, just to get used to sharing our testimony with a little bit more detail, but also in a way that's concise. Oh, God bless it. We can be so concise. So I've written mine down. I'm going to read this to us, and then we're going to practice this together. So you can still use the same phrases. There was a time in my life when, and then, and if you want to share the gospel in this, bonus. It's even more awesome. Okay, so there was a time in my life when I felt very depressed and rejected. I felt like I could never fit in or belong, so I was often very lonely. Sometimes I even thought it would be better if I died. Then I walked into a church one day, felt the presence of love in a way I never had before. The pastor talked about how Jesus died in our place so we could be made whole, and in my heart, I knew that's what I'd been missing all of my life. I surrendered my life to Jesus. He began to take me on a journey of getting to know him and understanding who he made me to be. Now, I've come to know I'm loved and made for a purpose. It's not that I don't have struggles anymore, but I know they don't define me. I know that I am a whole person and Jesus is leading me every day. Do you have a story like that? Okay, now, truthfully here, I did more than 2 sentences on each one. So like 2 to 4 sentences when you write it out. But just to practice, what are the core pieces of my testimony? And can I get used to sharing the gospel, which we'll talk about in our next lesson, in the context of my testimony? Because I could share the gospel right then and there, have a conversation with somebody, share the gospel again, so they keep hearing it. There was a time in my life when I felt super broken and lost. I was just really depressed and anxious, and I didn't know what to do. Then I encountered the love of the living God and understood that it's not about me being perfect, it's that Jesus died and paid for every bad thing that I have done. He took my place. So when I surrendered my life to him, I got his perfect life in exchange for my broken life. Since I've done that, my life hasn't been perfect, but every single day, every moment, every season, Jesus has been with me. He has comforted me. He's brought restoration to my family. He saved my life when my house burned down and I could have died. He's done miracles in my life, and I'm so grateful to get to walk and journey with him. Do you have a story like that? Okay, so there's a couple examples. There's the examples when I wrote it and read it just to get myself used to it. But when we're on the street, we're not going to be obviously reading things. It's just to get us in the practice of this. So what I want you to do is I want you to write out your testimony and just practice saying it. It's going to be 1 to 3 minutes. You can do it. And then I want you to share your testimony with at least one other person in both formats. I want you to share the 15-second one, and I want you to share the 1 to 3 minute one just to get the muscle memory in. It's okay if it's somebody you know. Ideally, you'll also try this with somebody you don't know, but you're going to get plenty of practice on the streets. Your testimony, your story is the only Bible that so many people are going to read up to this point. You're the only Jesus that they're going to meet. Your story matters. People can't argue with your testimony. It releases faith in them. And then when you say, do you have a story like that? It invites them into a dialogue and it continues the conversation.